All right, welcome all. We're doing another Kings of War battle report. My Kingdoms of Men versus some Nightstalkers. So this is 2,300 points to standard. We're doing a control scenario. So my opponent is testing out some Nightstalkers using the Ravagers build with some Doppelgangers. So we always like to use the control scenario for testing, since it's kind of a good way to level set all these army lists. So for me, I'm going to be running the same army I've ran the last few games. I've got a Spear Phalanx with pikes, got the Dragon Shard Shield on them, Foot Guard with the Hammer of Measured Force. I put Indomitable Will on them, 2 regiments of Militia Mob, Fanatics with the Blood, Knights with Jesse's Boots. I'm still running my Charioteers with the Brew of Haste, 2 Giants, and then I'm running a Standard Bearer with the Loot, 3 Mounted Heroes, and Captain. That's 14 units for 26 unit strength. So my opponent is running 4 units of Doppelgangers, a little spicy. He's running 3 Ravager units. He's running 2 Soul Flares, 2 Planar Apparitions, and he's got double Banshee. So he's got a regular Banshee. He's given Resonating Chorus, so that's the double tap. He's got the Conjurer's Staff on that. And he's got the Wailing Banshee, who's got the Enthrall, right, the Beguilement. Basically, pull someone in, shoot them a whole lot, and then have her pull her in the rest of the way so she can then punch them in hand-to-hand and kill them. So that's the combo. So let's see how it goes. So in the setup, that's just my army. Right, I've got my 3 heroes. I've got the Captain, Standard Bearer, my Foot Guard, the Fanatics, 2 Giants, still waiting on the models. I've got my Knights over here, the Pikes, 2 Militia Mob regiments, and I've got the Chariots that I'm using. Right now I'm using my Beast Cav, and I'm using them on a Chariot base. Alright, so this is just the setup. So towards the left of a table, you've got a little bit of open terrain with these two walls, and then some forest in the center. We then have some difficult terrain in form of a pool, a hill, and then a forest on this side. That's just looking at it long ways. So let's look at setup. So I get this side here, and me sitting up on the left. I begin by just I don't know what he's going to start setting up, so I kind of put my Chariots on one end, and then I put my Foot Guard and Militia. Towards the center, this is where I put my heroes, so I can devote them anywhere I want. I put a Giant behind them. I've got my Pikes, and I've got my Standard Bearer on the other side. I've got my Knights running over here, the Giant behind them. I've got the Fanatics and the other Militia Mob. So you can see you're already with the Knights. Remember, I am playing an army that has a lot of Wind Blast, so you're going to see here that I will be placing my models that I don't want Wind Blasted. I'm going to be putting a unit behind them, so that's what I'm doing right here with the Giant. So for him, again, he's still testing this army out, so he's building his army. But the bigger bases are the Ravagers, so he's got 1 Ravager unit here, and these smaller infantry bases, these are the Doppelgangers. So 1 unit of Ravagers, 2 units of Doppelgangers. The monster basis is Planar Apparition, and this is one of his Soul Flares. That's towards the right, towards my left. On the left side, he's really stacking this flank a lot more. He's got 2 of his units of Ravagers, and then he's got 2 Doppelgangers, a Soul Flare behind them, Planar Apparition. So he split his army to 2 separate groups, although the left flank is much stronger because he also has both of his Banshees over here. So this is definitely his stronger flank. So me looking at that, I really don't want my Chariots over there. I really see that he stacked the left flank. So I decide to move my Chariots over here. So I'm now committing them further to the right flank. The plan is that I want to push that right flank really fast with my cavalry and my Chariots. And then I have my Fanatics coming up behind them, hit that flank hard, and then kind of go towards the right. And then I get 2 with the Captain redeploy, and I move this Giant over, and then I put my Chariots behind them. So this is the new flank, right? Pretty heavily, a lot of my faster units and more heavy hitter units are all here. On the left flank, I leave my foot guard and a militia mob. The foot guard are pretty tough, and so this is my stalling flank, right? All these two squads are meant to do is to stall as much as possible his left flank, my left flank. All right, top of turn one. So I do get to go first. The first thing I do is I push pretty aggressively those knights and those chariots. You can see I've got a standard bearer right behind those knights. I don't want those knights to get pushed back, so I push them up pretty far, and I also push up the chariots. One of the real advantages to having a 20 move on the chariots is that I can actually stick the chariots behind the knights and still be able to charge both, right? The knights are within charge range, and so are the chariots. So that's definitely an advantage of just having that speed bonus, is that those chariots can be behind those knights and I can still charge. I move a hero over here, and then I also move up my militia mob and my fanatics. I push the center up. That fanatic touches the forest so you can see over it. In the left flank, what I don't want, I push up the center pretty aggressively. Since I'm pushing this right flank pretty hard, I don't want him to commit resources from the center and kind of flank me. So I've got this giant here basically there to stop him from pivoting and going towards the center, or else he's going to take a flank. I push both of my heroes up, and again, I've got the captain right behind that giant. I don't want him wind blasting that giant back, so I just stick the captain right behind him. I push these guys up a little bit, but not as much as I would like, just because I want these guys staying back, right? I want him to have to really come into this side of the board so he is not able to come to the center and help out the right flank. All right, that's just another picture. All right, bottom of one. So this is a combo, by the way, for anyone not understanding. The first thing he does is he uses his Banshee to pull the giant in. He then double taps him with both of the Ravagers, and then he uses the Wailing Shadow, the Wailing Banshee, basically, to then beguilement into him, and then he hits her further. So now I knew this was going to happen, but I also felt with an 18-20 on the giant, I did feel, and the giant's def 5, I felt pretty good that the giant would survive. So he did roll pretty good, and he put 11 wounds on the giant, which is a little high. So he needs 8s because it's dread, so it's a 20 nerve, and then 12 of dread, and then he rolls 8s twice, so he does get this giant. So a little, like I said, my opponent rolls a little hot in the early game, and this is one of these rules that by averages, he probably should have stuck. But at the same time, I'm not stressed. He is committing a lot of resources, and most importantly, he's not turning any of these units to go towards the center, right? So, it's fine. He also uses his Ravagers to shoot into my hero. He doesn't roll great, and I get 2 wounds on the hero, but the hero is fine. All right, so top of 2. So again, I just go ahead and push my 2 heroes into these Ravagers. All I'm trying to... he's got his planar apparition. I know these guys are going to get healed up. The whole point is just to pin these Ravagers back. The other thing is that I also push up my foot guard. I don't want these... I don't want any of this left flank being able to come in and sweep my center. So by me pushing up these foot guard, I force him that he's not able to really turn, because he's going to get a flank on the foot guard. So again, this is just a stall action. It's forcing him to take these 3 units and commit them to the foot guard. He's got to use all 3 units, because if he commits 1 unit of doppelgangers, I'm going to be able to outtrade them. The other thing I do is just push my pikes up the center, so the pikes are going to be basically staying in the forest a lot of the game and just holding that center. Push the knights up in charge range. I also push my captain to get within his 6-inch rally bubble on the 2 heroes. I then charged the knights into the doppelgangers. I went back and forth, but I decided that the doppelgangers were a much bigger threat than the Ravagers. So I put my knights, I popped the boots and put my knights into those doppelgangers to blow them up. I also come over here and unhindered charge into these Ravagers, doing some damage to them, and put my hero into the other doppelgangers. Alright, so this turn goes as expected, I would think. I blow up the doppelgangers and just turn. The hero does 1 wound. That's all I need for these doppelgangers to basically be stuck there. And then I also come in with 7. I roll a little low the wounds, but I do make up for it with a decent nerve roll, and I waver these guys. So all in all, this flank is looking very good. Also, you can already see I've got the fanatics that I've already pushed up, and I've also got my militia already planning to go towards the center. Right, I feel this flank is crumbling pretty fast. All right, towards the center, I do what's necessary. The heroes don't roll great, but they get, all they need is that one wound, and they get it on both of the Ravagers. So that's all I need. All right, bottom of 2. So he sends his, it's a bit of a bait. I did give him this charge. I feel pretty good that this hero is going to stick. So I also just, I don't want him going into the Knights. I'd rather him, even if he kills this guy, I'd rather him going into the Fanatic. So that's fine. He then, he does a withdrawal and he goes into the Knights. So I don't mind that either. Since they're withdrawing, they're now hitting on 4s. Even if it's 32 attacks, they don't have any crush and they don't have any thunderous. They're disordered. So I'm not too worried about that, hitting on 4s with 32 dice and crush 0. The other thing he does is that's the other problem, I guess, with these chariots. They have these large bases, so he is able to withdraw here, and he's able to get a flank on them. I'm not too worried about that, actually. I mean, like I said, these guys hit on 4s base, Ravagers. They're only crush 1, and since they withdrew, they're at another -1. The Wailing Shadow goes in there as well. So, they're going to do some damage, but that's still, by averages, they're not going to kill this unit. Again, they are a 1921 with Inspiring, and all I need them to do is stick, and I've got 2 flanks here. So he'd have to roll pretty good to take out these chariots. He moves his Banshee up, and he pushes back my captain. He's trying to get my captain outside of the rally bubble. Yeah, and then he also sends his soul flares. This is fine for me too. He basically, one of the things this unit's doing, he is not allowed to bring these doppelgangers towards the center. He brings them instead towards the left flank, and he also goes to my foot guard with his soul flares. So that's fine. He does some healing, so the planar apparition moves. You're going to see throughout the game some of these wounds getting cleared. He's healing with the planar apparitions. All right, so his soul flares hit my standard bearer, but they only waver him. So actually a little better than expected. I was expecting him to die. The doppelgangers go into 5 wounds here. He casts a he heals this area as well, so they're fine. So 5 wounds on the Knights is negligible. He does unfortunately roll pretty good. He actually rolls extremely good. He manages 13 wounds, which on average I think he was supposed to do 11 and 12. But even with the 13 wounds, he needs like a 7 twice, because he has dread, so he needs a 7 twice, and he gets it. So it is some good rolls he's making. Early game, he definitely rolled good. So that's just how it is. The Ravagers, again, another pretty good roll. He actually kills my hero, which is not a great roll for him. He actually is going to do about 4 to 5 wounds and need like a 7 twice. So another pretty good roll, right? All right. He does 3 wounds on the foot guard. Not a big deal. All right. Top of 3. So I put this on the previous one. I'll just show you here. So he did 3 wounds, and then I also just countercharged. So this is technically on top of 3. I countercharge with my foot guard and my militia mob into those soul flares. Here, I put my pikes and the giant into his Ravager. So the pikes are hindered, but the giant, all I'm really looking for here is a waiver. So that's fine. My hero goes into the Banshee. Again, that double tap on that Banshee is nasty. So that Banshee hit my captain last turn and did a wound on her. So that double tap on that Banshee is really nasty. So I'm trying to shut that down. I counter charge into the doppelgangers, and I combo charge the fanatics and the militia mob into the soul flares. They're dead. I also send a hero into the flank. I'm just trying to get a disorder so they can't shoot. Excuse me, so they can't shoot. Yeah, I do 7 wounds on them, but I don't waver them. So you know, a bit of low rolling, but it's fine. I do kill the soul flares, which is expected, and I roll pretty good. And I kill the doppelgangers. I actually would have been okay with a waiver, but me getting a kill on them is really great. It means that this flank is doing just what it needs to do. Now, a bit of bad rolling. So I had some good rolling here, but some bad rolling. I actually failed to wound these Ravagers, so they are actually just fine. They can actually shoot. I do also kill these Ravagers here. Some pretty good rolls. I wouldn't say this is great rolling, but it's good that like it's definitely good that I killed these guys. It frees up them for one extra turn. The captain goes and disorders the Ravagers, and then yeah, I do 1 wound on the Banshee. And so this after that happens, my pikes and my giant turn towards the center. I now have a pretty strong hold in his center, and I'm also, like I said, my militia mob and my knights, they're coming here. So my definitely goal is to grab his center while holding my own. All right. Yeah. So that's that. Bottom of 3. So he decides to charge me. So he puts the soul flares and one of the doppelgangers into my foot guard. He puts the other doppelgangers into my militia mob, which is great. I mean, doppelgangers don't do well against my army, especially because I have a lot of troops like this who are, you know, just as bad in hand anyway. So, but this could hurt right here. So yeah, and I also don't have any inspiring over here. His Ravagers were in a really bad spot. You know, it was a tough decision for him. He actually just decided to go into the pikes. It was a controversial decision. Yeah, I don't know. He also moves the Wailing Shadow over here. He's going to do the whole beguilement into her and try and do some damage to this hero. He goes ahead and moves his planar apparition so that my knights can't get to him. So my knights are going to go charge into him. And yeah. So that's just another overview of the battlefield. So you can see this is his my left flank, and it's getting kind of crushed right here. But again, these units are being taken out of the battle, right? His center is getting crushed while these 3 units are having to deal over here. So it's definitely okay. Like, I don't mind losing these 2 units. All right. Yeah, he's about to do his beguilement. He pulls the hero in. And on the damage chart, so he does 14 wounds and he wavers the foot knights, the foot guard, but they've got the indomitable will, so that's not a big deal to me. But they are wavered. He does 2 onto the militia. And he does 5 into the captain. He actually wavers the captain with the dread, but the captain is mighty, so that's fine. He does 5 into the hero, but rolls bad. I think he only gets like a 3. So actually the hero is not even wavered. And he does 6 wounds into the pikes. That's fine. Top of 4. So the giant just turns to face. I send both of my heroes. Remember, this hero was not wavered. So I send both of my heroes and my pikes into these Ravagers. I also Bane Chant the pikes, so they're 30 attacks hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s. So I feel pretty confident about that combat. Yep, Knights just go into the planar apparition. So I see this flank crumbling, so I decide to play a little chancy. I put my foot guard, they pop Indomitable Will, and I put them into these doppelgangers. And then I put these militia mobs into the soul flares, figuring that I can like waver these 2 units. This unit's probably not going to kill. So I'm taking a bit of a chance going into the doppelgangers, and then the militia mob are going into the soul flares. The other thing I do is my fanatics, they're pretty much, this side is caught. I do need my center. I need to make sure I don't lose my center. So I go ahead and just send my fanatics. That's a 4 unit strength unit. The other thing is that these pikes are technically on his side of the board. So I really, right now, have no units in my center, so I send my fanatics there. Yep. So here, yeah, I don't roll great. I only get one wound, but I do waver the. So that's pretty good that I waver them, but I don't waver. I get 8 wounds, so I roll a little below average, and then I roll a 6. Those doppelgangers are 15, 17, which is very good, and I rolled a 14. So that 15, 17 nerve is actually a pretty big deal here, right? They aren't wavered. So yeah, pretty good on those doppelgangers. They're really good for 145 points. All right, I do win this combat. The pikes roll all well, and then the 2 heroes contribute. So I do blow up these Ravagers, which is great. My goal now is to take out unit strength. You know, I'm not even interested in trying to kill these characters. Disordering them is fine for me. Not even the planar apparition. What I am trying to do is take out unit strength. So I do kill here, and then my pikes turn, and they're facing these Ravagers. I've also put the pikes in range so that they've got their ensnare in the right place. Okay, bottom of 4. So he moves up his planar apparition. He does do some healing with just his aura of life, and he moves up his planar apparition to block my pikes. He also moves over his Wailing Shadow. He's going to do the whole get over here thing to my captain. Yeah, he puts his doppelgangers back. So these foot guard are probably dead, and he flanks the doppelgangers with these guys. So these 2 guys could very well die. These guys aren't inspired, so. Yeah, and then his Ravagers, they turn, and remember, I didn't. The captain was wavered last turn, so they can actually shoot. So yeah, that's just a bigger part of the battle. He does enthrall in, and he fights my captain. So that's just enthralling him, getting in base contact. And the Ravagers shoot the pikes and do an additional 5 wounds. They're at 11, so that's a little tough, but that's fine. You know, those pikes still have a Dragon Charge shield, so I'm still feeling pretty good about them. Oh, this is upside down. I'm sorry. But yeah, the doppelgangers cure the foot guard, and these doppelgangers in the flank take out the militia mob. So this flank is officially his. But that wavering on these, the good thing is that when I wavered these soul flares, they're still facing this way. So they have one more turn that they have to turn around to actually commit. He does face these doppelgangers towards, so they're facing this way. Both units are facing towards the center, but that's fine. So that's just another picture of some of the things that's going on. He does 9 wounds on the captain, but he doesn't waver the captain. So his rolls are actually starting to cool down, and mine actually started to heat up. So he rolled really good early, but now, again, he didn't waver this guy, and he didn't waver the captain now. So now the captain is free as well. So top of turn 5. So I'm not too worried about the planar apparition. I feel I could get a waiver on him. So I want to keep these pikes towards the middle of the if I go into the planar apparition, then I'm kind of committing into his table quarter, and I don't want to. So I actually just turn them and face the doppelgangers. The other thing is that my hero, the 5 wound hero, goes into his Banshee, and then the captain, he's going to go back into the Ravagers. My fanatics just move up, so I have a 4 unit strength in my center, and I also have I move up the militia mob, so they're also here in my center as well. So this is when my rolls really get better. I wound the Banshee twice, and rolled 10s twice to kill her, and then I go into the Ravagers. So I'm sorry. The captain was wavered, so I not only kill the Banshees, but I also hit the Ravagers and hurt them too. I did Bane Chant the hero, so that helped out a little bit, but just rolling 10s twice, that was my big roll here. All right, I do 8 wounds on, so a little bit of a low roll for me. I do 8 wounds onto the planar apparition. I just need like a 4 to waver because I have brutal, but I only roll a 3, so that planar apparition is actually not wavered. So he can actually, so a bit of an oversight, but I do roll bad, and he can now flank my pikes. Not a big deal, but it was a little unexpected. I generally, this was a big roll for me. To take out one of his banshees and then to do a wound on his ravagers was huge. Bottom of 5. So he moves up his doppelgangers in range. He also, as you're going to see, he's going to flank these pikes. He's behind, so he starts to play a lot more aggressive. He's hoping he can waver these pikes, and then they'll be free to maybe even charge the fanatics. Yeah, that's just his planar apparition. He does have to withdraw, and then it is hitting the flank of the pikes. The Ravagers just countercharge into the hero, and also he sends the Wailing Shadow into my knights. He turns his Soul Flares towards the center, and he also just moves back his Doppelgangers to claim that board objective. His Soul Flares use the Wind Blast to push back my Militia Mob a little further, but it's not a big deal. So yeah, he doesn't roll. I think he rolls about average. I mean, that planar apparition has no crushing and doesn't hit great, and he's also got the withdrawal -1. So he ends up doing 2 wounds on the pikes, but they're fine. The Wailing Shadow does another. I think it's another 3 wounds on these knights, but they're fine. And he does 9 wounds into this hero, but the hero actually sticks, is wavered. So that's another. His rolls definitely start to cool down. So on my 6, so this is the top of 6, and top of 6. So I sent my other hero, which was back here. That's his 2 wounds. We move it later. But this hero and the giant and the captain all go into the Ravagers. I flank the pikes into these doppelgangers, and I also charge the militia mob into them. That's just another picture. That's their 13 wounds. I Bane Chant the pikes. They kill the doppelgangers, and then they turn to face. The militia mob also just turn to face. And then I roll 11 wounds, and we waver these Ravagers. So I probably, the giant rolled a little low, but a waver is fine. A waver is fine there. And then I go back into the Wailing Shadow, do 5 wounds, but she's fine. So that's just the end of, so this was technically my last full turn, and as you can kind of see, I've put 6 unit strength into my side of the board. These pikes are technically on his side, so I've got 4, 8, 9 unit strength on his side of the board, and he has he's got basically 3, 4. So he does need to take out one of these units. I see here my pikes just go ahead. I wasn't able to get the front charging both, so I just go ahead and just face the Soul Flares. Not too worried about that planar apparition either. Bottom of 6. So he goes into my pikes with his planar apparition. His Soul Flares actually, he's trying to play for the win here. So if he could take out this unit and take out this giant, that's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 against my only 4. So he has to roll really good because this giant only has 2 wounds on him. But he does go into the flank of my hero. He does kill both of those heroes. So that's 6. The dice is broken. The giant is only on 2 wounds. So he does kill both of the heroes, and then he overruns into the giant. So that's just showing that. The giant rolls, so he actually does 13 wounds on the giant, but the giant gets wavered, but the giant also has fury. So it's fine. So we do roll for turn 7, and the top of 7 means my 13 wound giant turns around and goes into his Soul Flares. The planar apparition does waver the pikes, so they're at 14 wounds. He does get a waver off on them. At this point, I just turn to face the planar apparition. I then pop the Dragon Shard shield. So these guys are now, they're now def 6. So I think those pikes are going to stay around. And then the captain goes into the side of the Ravagers. I just turned these 2 units, so they are pretty much out of the battlefield, but I have my center. And yeah, so the captain does 1 wound and actually rolls good. Again, I definitely, he rolls good early. I roll better later on in the game, and I do roll 7s twice to kill the Ravagers. The giant, the captain one-shots them, and the giant goes over and he attacks and kills the wounded soul flares. As well as the knights, they finish off they finish off the Wailing Shadow. And yeah, bottom of 7. So in his bottom of 7, he just, his planar apparition actually just flies back into this table quarter. So he has 1, and his doppelgangers over here have 2. So this unit is lost. So this is dead unit. So he has 1, 2 table quarters, and I have 1 of my own, and I get 2 for his table quarter. So at the end of the game, he has 2, I have 3. So it is a 3-2 narrow victory for the Kingdoms of Men. A really close game. Again, he had some really great rolls early, but I feel I had some better rolls later. So rolls, I would say, were slightly in my favor, but overall, I think that even though there was some hot rolling and some cold rolling, we had a pretty good idea of how this army performed. All right, so what's my opinion on the Ravagers? I'm not impressed with them. I know that this was a big deal. He actually had played another game, this army, and he destroyed his opponent. But he was also playing a small, like a slower army that had more shooting. So one of the reasons that I've dropped all the shooting in my army is because it's basically useless. So I think Ravagers, against my army are just not that good. The Ravagers really only got like 1 shot off, and then the rest of the time they were actually fighting in hand to hand. And like at that point, when you're having Ravagers fight in hand to hand, you might as well just have Butchers. And like this is something we discussed, and I think he wants to try. Is I think that Ravagers could still benefit from the Wind Blast and the Enthrall. Like the Wailing Shadow and the Banshee were great. That was a great combination. I think that's a great combo with them. I think you keep the Enthrall and Wind Blast, and you just replace with, like, instead of using those Ravagers, hey, throw in a Terror, throw in Bloodworms, throw in Butchers, and that Wind Blast and Enthrall is really going to allow those heavy hitting hand-to-hand units to kind of pick their targets and not be overwhelmed. So I think that like Ravagers are really good against slow armies, but they suffer against Alpha Strike lists. The other thing that I think it's kind of ironic, but I think that I think that Nightstalker players who are going to be running Ravagers are actually going to be annoyed at their own army special rule when they go up against other Nightstalkers who have stealth and don't have Ravagers, right? Because that's after, like I said, this was a big discussion about how, quote, broken Ravagers are. I don't think that they are. I just think that, yes, they're better than Boomers, but they're just honestly not a good unit. And I think one of the biggest things that's holding Ravagers back is their own army, is Nightstalkers, right? With just a prevalence of Nightstalker lists in tournaments, Ravagers are just not going to do well. I think honestly you're just better off running Butchers. So yeah, I wasn't impressed with Ravagers. I think I don't know. I think that I think that they're good in certain armies. There are certain like armies that are a little more slower, maybe like Undead, who have a lot of shambling. That a lot of that Wind Blast and Thrall was really going to screw over those armies. But yeah, I don't think that Ravagers are all that good, except as kind of like a maybe one unit, maybe one unit. I think. Hey, thanks for watching. You can always play against me on Universal Battles. I'm always interested in feedback. Like, subscribe, and comment. And if you're in Austin, hey, join the Austin Kings of War Facebook group. So, thank you very much.